In just a few weeks' time, we will get a look at some of the 2022 Formula One cars, which have undergone one of the biggest regulation changes in Formula One history, with the aim of bringing the field closer together and improving the racing. It's not the first time this has happened in F1 history. We've seen many regulation changes aimed at making the racing closer, improving the safety, and also cutting costs. My name is Luke Etheridge, and throughout this video, we'll be going through some of the many regulation changes in recent history, plus a few older ones that did cause some controversy. Before we start, don't forget to hit the subscribe video. If you like what you see, I'm going to try and post regular videos throughout the course of 2022, and let's get started with this year's Formula One cars. Now, the main aim of the 2022 regulations is to cut the costs and improve racing, and to do this, the F1 regs and the rule makers are going back to the future and going back to something known as ground effect. But what exactly is ground effect? Now, ground effect never actually really went away from Formula One, not in terms of what the effect actually is. You've got an aerodynamic surface extremely close to the ground, the air speeds up under that surface, and you get extra downforce. And ideally, the closer you can run to the ground, the more downforce that will be produced. It's why we saw cars in the 70s completely sealing that gap between the side pods and the floor with the sliding skirts, even at some tracks being able to run without a front wing. However, these cars in the late 70s and early 80s were extremely difficult to control, and in the end became too unsafe for the governing body, and so ground effect in that sense was banned, and the majority of the downforce since has really been created by aerodynamic surfaces on top of the car, such as the front and rear wings. Next year, expect to see more simpler tops of the car. The front wings and rear wings should be a lot less complex than they are now, and expect to see a lot more complex floors. Although you probably won't really see them because the teams will want to keep them secret, of course. This might benefit teams who are able to run a lower ride height, and also teams that have been running a lower rate, like Mercedes and Aston Martin, so it wouldn't surprise me too much if they get next year's regulations right. Another big visual change for the cars next year will be the removal of the 13-inch wheels that we've only ever really seen on single-seater cars, and moving to 18-inch wheels with lower profile tyres. This should mean the tyres can take a bit more of a battering. They're not going to have as much flex in the sidewall, so shouldn't generate too much overheating, so should last longer. Whether this is going to lead to more excitement, I'm not sure. The drivers might be able to push that slight bit harder, but probably means we're just going to end up with one-stop races and not a lot of variation in the strategies. The cars will also be ever so slightly shorter than their previous counterparts and slightly heavier as well due to the extra weight of the wheels. Despite this extra weight though, they're expecting to be pretty close to the 2021 cars on lap times, and a few drivers have said they expect them still to be awkward to follow in dirty air, but we probably won't really notice until the first race of the season in Bahrain. Now, the previous generation of Formula One cars was introduced in 2017. Bigger tyres, bigger wings, longer, just generally meant to look more angrier, more like a traditional Formula One car, and aimed at just making them a lot faster than the early hybrid era cars. However, this did come at a price. It was expected before they were introduced that there'd be more dirty air and the racing would suffer, and unfortunately on a lot of occasions this happened to be the case. Now, the cars did undergo some changes. In 2017, you might remember we had the shark fin and the T-wing, not necessarily the most glamorous looking of things seen on a Formula One car. And of course, for 2018, the Halo safety device was introduced. Extremely controversial at the time. I think crashes since have generally made everyone agree that it was a good thing for Formula One. This generation of Formula One cars also saw the first real battles that Mercedes had in the championship in the hybrid era, with Sebastian Vettel getting extremely close in 2017 and 2018, accidents in both years and reliability possibly costing him, and Red Bull of course have stepped up the mantle, claiming the driver's title in 2021 with Max Verstappen. I don't think anyone could really argue that from a pure pace point of view, the cars we've seen over the last 5 years have been absolutely fantastic. Some superb qualifying laps. However, racers sometimes haven't really lived up to the hype. We have seen some crazy races, but that's normally needed something to happen with penalties or with incidents, safety cars, red flags, or even the weather. So hopefully next year's cars will be able to provide a bit more on-track action in normal circumstances. Now, if we cast our minds back to 2014, we might remember the introduction of the hybrid power units. Quite controversial, not universally loved then, still not universally loved now. 1.6 litre V6 engines, turbos back in Formula 1 for the first time since 1988, and a lot more electrical energy than we'd ever seen before. The MGU-H added on to the already existing MGU-K, and that was improved as well. So hybrid system producing double the electrical energy what we'd seen from KERS, and that energy would last for a lot longer, and everyone knew whoever got the engines right would likely dominate. Now, even before the cars had been on track, the general feeling was Mercedes would get those rules right. And they most certainly did. 59 races from 2014 to 2016, Mercedes claiming victory in 51 of them. Lewis Hamilton taking the title in 2014 and 2015 before his teammate Nico Rosberg took the championship in 2016, promptly retiring at the top. I mean, there's no doubt these engines were and still are a technological marvel. The efficiency of them is brilliant. It's almost sort of the last throes of the internal combustion engine. However, they weren't the fastest initially. There was the odd track where we saw some of the lower teams getting out-qualified by the GP2 cars on occasion, and also extremely expensive. Perhaps no surprise, therefore, in 2014 we saw Marussia exit Formula 1 and also Caterham exit. We only had Haas join as a brand new team in the hybrid era. In 2009, there was quite a major change to the look of the cars to aim to make things a bit simpler and to improve the racing. Sound familiar? There was simplified bodywork, wider front wings, narrower and taller rear wings, and for the first time since 1997, slick tyres. And the 2009 season probably saw one of the biggest mix-ups in the order we've ever seen with a regulation change, and one of the biggest fairy tale stories in sport, never mind Formula 1. Since taking over BAR in time for the start of the 2006 season, Honda had generally been on a steady downward slope. They did win a race in 2006 with Jenson Button at the Hungarian Grand Prix, but struggled immensely in 2007 and 2008, and partly thanks to this and the financial crisis, they pulled out of Formula 1. Ross Brawn took the team over for the price of just £1, managed to budge a Mercedes engine in the back, and thanks to the double diffuser, absolutely dominated the first half of the season. Previous frontrunners McLaren and Ferrari struggled, as did other manufacturer teams, as they tried to work the KERS system into their car. Yes, 2014 wasn't the first time we technically had hybrid units. Electrical energy was being used all the way back in 2009. A lot of the teams elected not to use it at races, though, due to the unreliability and the extra weight. 2010 and 2011 also saw other changes to the regulations to get us to the point we are today with Formula 1 cars. Refueling was banned for 2010 to save costs and after numerous incidents on safety grounds, and also there was no KERS for 2010, although it was brought in for 2011 alongside the drag reduction system, DRS, and Pirelli tyres, both of which were introduced in an aim to spice up racing. Now, we've spoken about how modern Formula 1 engines are some of the most technologically advanced in history, but the cars are so far off what we saw in the 90s, especially in terms of driver aids. Active suspension, launch control, traction control, and anti-lock brakes were all legal. And in 1993, Williams even tried a continuously variable transition, which would have cut easily 2 to 3 seconds per lap off their times, making an already dominant car simply unbeatable. The FIA decided that the drivers were getting a bit too much assistance in a Formula 1 car, so all driver aids were banned for the 1994 season, and in an effort to try and spice up the racing again, refueling was reintroduced for the first time since 1983. Notice how Formula 1 bans and then unbans stuff quite often. It became clear in testing that the cars were a lot more unstable without these driver aids. Ayrton Senna, in a frighteningly accurate prophecy, said he'd expected to see a lot more crashes throughout the 1994 season, and he was proven instantly right in pre-season testing, where Benetton new signing JJ Leto had a high-speed crash and ended up getting a neck injury, causing him to miss the first 2 races. After the first round at the Brazilian Grand Prix, Jean Alesi had an equally large accident and a back injury kept him out for the following 2 races. And then came the third race of the season, The 1994 San Marino Grand Prix. Friday, Rubens Barrichello has a high-speed crash over the curbs at Imola, pitching him into the tyre barriers, swallowing his tongue, and the young Brazilian needed instant medical intervention to save his life. Apart from that, he came out relatively unscathed. Saturday, Roland Ratzenberger, in only his third race weekend, has a front wing failure on the way into the fast right-hander at Villeneuve, pitching the Austrian Simtek into the wall at 180 miles per hour. He was killed instantly, the first fatality in Formula 1 for 8 years, and the first at a race weekend since 1982. And then, on Sunday, on lap 7 of the San Marino Grand Prix, 3 times Formula 1 World Champion Ayrton Senna lost control of his car going through Tamburello, the Williams impacting the wall at over 140 miles per hour, the 34-year-old Brazilian eventually succumbing to multiple head injuries. This after a start line crash had led debris to be littered into the crowd, causing multiple injuries, and before Michele Alboreto lost a wheel in his pit stop, leading to severe injuries to a member of the Ferrari pit crew. It was obvious something needed to change. It was announced that the Grand Prix Driver Association would be reformed on the Friday morning at Monaco. Before this on the Thursday, however, Karl Wendlinger in the Sauber had a massive crash on the way into the Nouvelle chicane. Coming out of the tunnel at high speed, his head actually hit the barrier, and that left him in a coma for 3 weeks, ended his season, and effectively ended his Formula 1 career. It was announced on the meeting on Friday that the drivers would be forced to slow down for the rest of the season, downforce would be reduced for the Spanish Grand Prix, cockpit safety would be improved for the Canadian Grand Prix, and many tracks would see changes. You might remember the Eau Rouge chicane at the 1994 race. Between the Monaco and Spanish Grand Prix, Pedro Lamy was trying out the new changes to his Lotus. The Portuguese driver was testing at Silverstone, had an absolutely horrific crash at Bridge, landing in a spectator tunnel. He doesn't know how he'd got there. No one knows how he ended up there, but he was out of Formula 1 for over 12 months. And then, in practice for the Spanish Grand Prix, Andrea Montemini crashed his Simtek into the wall, thankfully coming away only with minor injuries to both of his feet. It was pretty clear that the regulation changes brought in to Formula 1 had a huge detrimental impact to driver safety. And for our final regulation change, we're going to answer the question, when is Formula 1 not Formula 1? When it's Formula 2. After winning the first 2 World Championships, Alfa Romeo suddenly pulled out of the sport, leaving Ferrari as the only serious contender. Knowing that new regulations were planned for 1954, the FIA decided to try and entice more teams into the sport to run the 1952 and 1953 championships to Formula 2 regulations, not Formula 1, in the hope that this would avoid Ferrari domination. What we got was Ferrari domination. In 1952, the Italian Alberto Ascari won 6 out of 8 races that made up that year's Formula 1 World Championship. The only 2 he didn't win were the Swiss Grand Prix, because he wasn't there, and the 1952 Indianapolis 500. He'd missed the Swiss race as he was preparing for this, which was a round of the Formula 1 World Championship at the time, but the Italian retired early on. He had things slightly harder. In 1953, he only won 5 out of the 9 races that season to become the first driver to win consecutive Formula 1 World Championships. It's pretty obvious then that the FIA isn't afraid of making changes to Formula 1, and we'll see some more in 2025 when the MGU-H is removed from the current engine regulations in order to simplify them, and an effort to try to get more manufacturers into the sport. Leave a like if you've enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what regulation changes would you like to see, and what was your favourite era of Formula 1 racing. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time around. Goodbye.